Chapter 2101. Yellow Crane. Little Benefactor. Fairy Yellow Crane stumbled over with Yun Shuer in her arms, and threw herself in front of Arba. Her lips trembled as she stammered, "Little Benefactor, save Yun Shuer, save Yun Shuer. I heard from Starlight Academy's Master Zhou that your medical skills are very impressive. You can definitely save her, Little Benefactor. Little Benefactor, save her, save Yun Shuer." "Yellow Crane, don't be agitated, let me take a look first." Arba saw her agitated expression, as if she had gone mad, and hurriedly reached out to comfort her. Fairy Yellow Crane clenched her fists tightly, kneeling beside Arba. The water stains on her hair, the rain and mud on her body made her look very miserable. Arba did not know what happened to her, and had her put Yun Shuer on the ground. He reached out to touch Yun Shuer's carotid artery, and slowly turned to look at Fairy Yellow Crane, who had a dazed expression and was staring blankly. "I'm sorry, she's already dead." Fairy Yellow Crane's tears streamed down her cheeks. She was completely dumbfounded. "Yellow Crane. Yellow Crane." Arba softly called her twice. Fairy Yellow Crane suddenly reached out to hug Yun Shuer's cold body, and wailed, "I'm useless. I'm just a black-grade alchemist, what am I? I gave her so many pills, and none of them were useful. I couldn't even save Yun Shuer. I let Chong Feng and Yun Shuer die in vain. I let them down, I let them down. Yellow Crane. Little Benefactor. Have you tasted the feeling of losing everything?" Yellow Crane's voice was hoarse, almost to the point of whispering, "I already have nothing now." Sect. Her sect could no longer tolerate her. Master actually wanted to turn her into a monster in a deranged manner. She escaped, but implicated the two maids closest to her. She really had nothing left. Arba only felt his heart ache, and reached out to hold Fairy Yellow Crane's dirty shoulder. "I can tell you with certainty. I have. 3 years ago, I was like you, feeling as if I had lost everything. But in fact, as long as we don't give up on ourselves, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how bumpy the road is, we can start over." Fairy Yellow Crane lay on her shoulder, crying like a lost child. Tears and snot flowed down her face, and her heart was broken. "Can I really start over?" "Sure." "Is that really okay?" "Yes." Arba's firm and gentle voice repeatedly sounded in Fairy Yellow Crane's ears. "Little Benefactor, do you know? Master wasn't like that before. She's really good." Fairy Yellow Crane murmured. "Really, really good. I don't know when she started to become so scary and cold-blooded. Can he still be my master? I'm so tired, so tired. Little Benefactor, I feel like I'm at a loss. I don't know where the road ahead is." Arba reached out and tightly grasped her ice-cold left wrist. "Yellow Crane, Yellow Crane." Seeing Yellow Crane gradually faint on her shoulder, Arba reached out to support her, and beckoned to Fairy Peony and Ginkgo, "Come help." "What's the matter with this clown?" Fairy Peony and Ginkgo flashed to her side, and raised their hands to support Fairy Yellow Crane. "I don't know for now." Arba looked up at Emolien. The latter nodded at her. "I'll tell Tong to investigate." Chapter 2102. Thousands of miles in Songzhou's dazzling purple light suddenly rushed out of the inner hall of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, illuminating the entire Songzhou. Regardless of whether it was the officials in the imperial court or the common people in the streets, all of them were alarmed by this soaring purple light. Everyone rushed to the streets, pointing at the sky and discussing enthusiastically. "Oh my God, what is that? It seems to be coming from the Imperial Ancestral Temple. I heard that Prince Chen was left in the Imperial Ancestral Temple half a month ago. It is said that he is inheriting the inheritance of the Devil Emperor." "No way, the legendary inheritance of the Devil Emperor. Is there really such a thing? Then now, His Highness, did he succeed?" At this time, the two princes, who were sitting in the Crown Prince's East Palace and chatting with the Crown Prince, also noticed the change in the sky and immediately jumped up from their chairs. "Brother! Look outside. Rongli walked out of the door with his two younger brothers with a cold face. The sky was completely dyed by the purple light, and the color was indescribably bright. Suddenly, a dragon's roar sounded, and a real dragon gradually emerged from the solid purple gas. It swung its tail and jumped, and its tail swept away a few drifting clouds. Rongli felt his heart skip a beat, and an ominous premonition came to his mind. Damn it! Did fourth brother succeed in inheriting the inheritance? How did he succeed in inheriting the blood of the Devil Emperor? What I am afraid of really happens. The second prince said angrily with a cold face, "This boy's luck is too good. Why does he always bump into all the good things?" Rongli subconsciously clenched his fists, and his knitted eyebrows gradually relaxed. He suddenly said with a smile, "It seems that fourth brother has come out of seclusion. You and I naturally have to go and congratulate him. Eldest brother, you can still laugh." The second prince had a look of disappointment on his face. Imperial father already thinks highly of that kid. Now that he has inherited the 1,000-year-old legacy, how are you and I going to deal with it? Well, we should be happy that fourth brother can inherit the blood of the Devil Emperor. The second prince couldn't help laughing. You are very generous. Don't you feel indignant that you lost to such a young brat? Rongli smiled non-committally. When he turned to leave, his eyes suddenly turned cold. Hey, third brother, didn't you say you sent someone to investigate that painting? The second prince suddenly thought of this and asked with a smile. But there's still no clue. Hey, second brother, you don't say. I really did find some clues. Rongli did not speak. He only slowed down his footsteps slightly. It was obvious that he had heard what the third prince had said. I started investigating from his hometown, Seekong Planet. Guess what I found? The third prince proudly boasted. I originally wanted to tell you guys about this matter slowly, but now that fourth brother has come out of seclusion early, I naturally have to tell you guys, just in case. Just in case, the third prince didn't continue, but the other two understood. If Imperial Father really fell in love with fourth prince, it would be hard to say what would happen in the future. Do you all know who that woman in the painting is? The impatient second prince hurriedly patted the third prince. All right, don't keep us in suspense. Hurry up and say it. That is the future crown princess of the divine land. What? Rongli couldn't help but be taken aback. Chapter 2103. Was it true? The second prince was dumbfounded by the third prince's words. The third prince saw that the two of them didn't seem to believe him. So, he quickly picked out some important matters and told them to his two elder brothers. Old Fourth seems to have a good relationship with the crown prince of the divine province. Rongli muttered, I've also heard of that crown prince of the divine province. It's said that he's been wandering outside all year round. Could it be that he's about to return to the divine province? Younger brother doesn't know about this. Rongli couldn't help but sneer. When he turned around, his expression turned cold. It seemed that this fourth brother of his really wasn't simple. The second prince paused and said, Hey, how about we bring that painting and go see Royal Father? Rongli's expression flickered, and he calmly revealed a hint of embarrassment. That's not very good. We're not going to make things difficult for him. Aren't we all planning for his sake? Who knows? Royal Father might be happy and make a decision for our good fourth brother. So what if she's the future crown princess of the divine province? Isn't she still the crown princess of the divine province? Rongli's eyes flickered. In reality, he had long wanted to expose this matter to Royal Father, but he had always lacked an opportunity. Since the third prince was willing to take the lead, he naturally wouldn't dissuade him. Instead, he had to properly thank him for his righteous act. Go quickly. If Royal Father knew that he had such a cowardly son, he would definitely be very happy. On the other hand, Duan Yu had just stepped out of the Imperial Ancestral Temple when he was stunned by the carriage that came to welcome him. The officials who came to pay homage to the Fiend Emperor's bloodline all looked up at the tall and slender figure standing at the entrance of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, and they couldn't help but be spellbound. They couldn't pinpoint what had changed, but they felt that Prince Chen was very different from half a month ago. His entire aura had changed, right? Or perhaps the hidden cold sharpness in his eyes had changed. At this moment, His Highness looked especially reserved, like a treasured sword with hidden edges that could be used at any time to deliver a fatal blow. This old official, Wu Yong, greets Your Highness Prince Chen. No need to be so courteous, Left Prime Minister, Duan Yu said coldly. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong raised his eyes and then immediately lowered his head. He didn't dare to look directly at those beautiful eyes that were emitting a faint purple light. Those eyes were as cold as ice, and the faint purple glow within them seemed to want to suck his old bones into them. How frightening! The Minister of the Left could be considered someone who was accustomed to grand occasions, but when he glanced at Duan Yu, he shuddered and was somewhat stunned. However, a tall and slender young man walked out from beside him and said with a smile, "We are here to welcome Prince Chen out of seclusion under the order of the Emperor. Your Highness, please enter the carriage. We will escort Your Highness back to the palace." Your Highness, your forehead? Currently, there was a light purple imprint on Duan Yu's jade-like forehead that resembled 3 flower leaves. It only appeared for a split second before disappearing. Wu Yong was nearly frightened to death by this young man, and he fiercely glared at him before hastily dragging him behind him. He then cupped his hands at Duan Yu and said, "Please, Your Highness." Duan Yu nodded indifferently and turned to board the carriage. The chamberlain lowered the layers of muslin curtains, and the carriage started moving. Duan Yu face-palmed with one hand, his expression somewhat fatigued. "Wu!" A little fox suddenly wriggled on his body and drilled out from his body. Chapter 2104. Woof! The little fox's claws crawled on his clothes. Duan Yu's lips involuntarily curled into a faint smile. In that instant, the iciness in his eyes completely dissipated. Sigh. With a sigh, he picked up the little fox and placed her on his shoulder. He patted her and said, "Chestnut, if Chow Chow sees you like this, she won't like you anymore." Chestnut's claws forcefully crawled on his clothes, and it stuck out a small claw in protest, silently complaining while pointing at the sky and the ground. "Tisk, isn't it just advancing to 8-tailed? You actually don't even have the ability to transform and even lost the ability to speak." Woof, woof. The little fox was cursing internally. It was actually disdained by this unreliable master. How infuriating! Was it his fault? If it weren't for him suddenly absorbing this whatever devil emperor bloodline crazily, how could it have become so wretched and inexplicably advanced to 8-tailed celestial fox? "Chestnut, thank you for accompanying me," Duan Yu said softly as he stroked the little fox's glossy fur. The little fox arched on his shoulder and suddenly slapped his head with a paw. It pointed at the sky and the ground and whimpered again. "Speak human language." Duan Yu calmly pulled away its paw and swept it a disdainful glance. "Little fox, when I advance to 8-tailed celestial fox, I'll definitely chirp by your ear every day until you can't sleep peacefully." Fairy Yellow, he didn't sleep very well that night. She didn't wake up with a start until noon the next day, and she jumped out of bed in a flash. "Oh, you're awake. Hurry and freshen up since you're awake. Come down for lunch." A female voice drifted in from outside the window, startling her. After she finished freshening up and went downstairs, Fairy Yellow he quickly walked up when she saw the people in the inn's main hall. After bowing towards Chiao Mu and the rest, Huang he said with slight embarrassment, "Yesterday I've made a fool of myself in front of everyone." "All right, sit down and eat." Abba pointed at the seat next to him, indicating for Fairy Yellow he to sit down. After Fairy Yellow Crane sat down uneasily, she opened her mouth and said, "Little benefactor, He was interrupted by Arbor. "We already know about what happened to you. Shuntian Hall was so big. Although everyone's hands couldn't reach into the main hall, they currently had the highest level of spies in the main hall. If one had the heart to investigate, there was nothing one could not find." Arbor really didn't expect that the palace lord of the Palace of Cold Blood was Tian Yun's man. At first, she only suspected that the Shun Tian Mansion's mansion master, Gung Pengcheng, was colluding with the Heavenly Fate sect, but she didn't expect that the two of them were related to the Heavenly Fate sect. Indeed, birds of the same feather flocked together. Fairy Yellow Crane looked at Arbor gratefully. "Thank you very much for yesterday's matter." "I didn't help much." Arbor scooped a bowl of rice and handed it to her. "Do you have any plans for the future?" Fairy Yellow Crane shook her head blankly. "Let me give you a suggestion," Miss Chow said expressionlessly. "You can pay for 2 years of food and lodging and follow us for the time being." Everyone! Exclamation point. Cough, 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 cough. Dao Wuji choked on a mouthful of soup. Arbor glanced at him, then turned to ask Emolien, "Hubby, did you charge?" A certain crown prince, who was used to Jojo's habit of charging fees, silently twitched his mouth and shook his head. "No, I didn't confiscate it." Arbor gave him a look that said, "You've suffered a great loss." Then he turned to little Tai Sui and Dao Wuji and said, "Pay up." Chapter 2105. Everyone looked at her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Dear, doesn't your conscience hurt when you say this?" Arbor said expressionlessly, "When my Ao Yi and Xiao Yao followed me, they also paid." What she meant was, "You people, how dare you not pay?" Everyone, Hu Shurchen chuckled and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, yes, you should pay. Look at you guys, you've wasted so many years growing up Jojo, yet you still eat and use her things every day. You should pay. Make it up for 8 or 10 years at once. Aya, little sister Xiao Qiao, you gave me such a good beauty cream, so of course I have to pay." Fairy Ginkgo covered her mouth and smiled. With a flick of her sleeve, a small pile of rare treasures appeared on the table. "Little sister Xiao Qiao, please kindly accept it." Arbor expressionlessly put the pile of things into her inner world and looked at Dao Wuji, little Tai Sui, and the others. After everyone silently handed over their things, they all looked at Hu Shurchen, who was sitting on the side with a smile. "Why doesn't he have to pay?" Dao Wuji asked angrily. "Isn't it obvious? How can I be the same as you? I was personally summoned by Jojo. I'm hers, and she's mine. With our relationship, do we still need to pay? What a joke. There are differences between close and distant, you know." Emolien cast him a sidelong glance before giving a non-committal harumph. "Moreover, I don't eat much," Hu Shurchen said plausibly. "Haha." Everyone looked at him coldly. Who was it that had to eat and drink well 3 times a day? And he said he didn't eat much? How shameless. Fairy Yellow Crane took out a bag of spirit coins from her pocket. 2 years of room and board. Here." Everyone, Arbor nodded and accepted all the things that everyone handed over. She raised her hand and patted Yellow Crane's shoulder lightly. "Don't worry, you won't be mistreated if you follow me." She paused, as if remembering something. She turned to Fairy Yellow Crane and said, "You're one of us now. There's something I won't hide from you." The mouths of those who didn't know what was going on twitched. He had a feeling that Miss Chow's next words would be more deceptive. As expected, Arbor glanced at the little Yellow Crane and said, "Actually, that time in the lava mountains. The reason why you were besieged by thousands of profound beasts. It's because of me. I sprinkled some medicinal powder to attract profound beasts and attracted the group of profound beasts over. You guys are really unlucky. You just happened to walk over, so you were innocently implicated. Then, we'll need to hunt a bunch of beasts for the entrance exam of our top-notch academy. It'll be troublesome to find them all over the place." "That's what I came up with." Everyone was speechless. The corners of Emolien's mouth twitched, and she couldn't help but put her hand to her forehead. The little fellow's serious face was expressionless as he continued, "Saving you afterwards was also an unintentional act. I'm not as selfless as you think. As teammates, we'll be on the same side from now on. I have to tell you this. Don't worry, I won't cheat you in the future." Everyone. Fairy Ginkgo guffawed. I can't take it anymore." Fairy Yellow Crane looked at her with a stupefied expression for a while before stammering, I know. Then, she said gratefully, little benefactor, you're really a good person. You clearly didn't have to tell me this, but you still told me. Chapter 2106. Don't worry, we'll forget about our past lives and start anew in the future. I, Huang He, acknowledge you as my friend. Arbor was speechless. He had been given the good guy card for no reason. Xiao Mu felt ashamed to accept it, and she patted Huang He's shoulder as she said, just call me by my name in the future. Don't call me benefactor, it's so annoying. Okay. Huang He nodded. I've already sent people to clean up that lady's remains. You can cremate her when you want. Huang He nodded and subconsciously clenched his fists. Okay. Come with me for a while after we eat. Move aside. Move aside. Move aside. A commotion suddenly came from outside the inn. Arbor and the others looked toward the source of the sound. The people at the door moved to the sides to make way for a wide passageway. A pair of black boots embroidered with gold thread appeared in front of everyone's eyes. He was like jade and his hair was soft. The man was wearing a dark purple robe and had a tall figure. He had a pair of seductive eyes that were slightly raised. He looked very enchanting and charming. A man could actually give people an inexplicable sense of charm. It was really indescribable. Jojo. That person stepped through the door as if he had discovered an alien planet. His eyes suddenly lit up and his gaze landed on Arbor. Emolien put down the bamboo chopsticks in her hand and indifferently swept her gaze over that person's face. She sneered. So it's young Master Ding. Ding Yun pointed at him. You. Why are you here? Emolien reached out to hold Jojo's small hand and coldly glanced at him. Of course I'm here to accompany my wife for a meal. Dao Wuji inexplicably felt that the seductive young master in front of him was probably a little heart-wrenching, because the other party's expression inexplicably changed, and his expression instantly turned ugly. Move aside. All of you move aside. Scram. Don't block the door. What's all the noise about? Young Master Ding flew into a rage out of humiliation. He turned around and flicked his sleeves. Several ferocious men who had rushed in were immediately swept away by a powerful force. Bang! 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 They all fell to the ground, their noses bruised and their faces swollen. Surround them. Behind them, a large group of guards rushed in with a wave of their hand. The large group of people surrounded the entire hall of the inn so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. They can't even have a peaceful meal. Hu Shurchen was speechless as he looked at the crowd that had barged in. Under the orders of the Manor Lord's wife, we are here to bring Fairy Yellow Crane back to the manor. The leader of the guards shouted and raised his hand. Take her down. At this time, young Master Ding had already walked to Arbor's side and asked with a smile, Jojo, do you need help? Why are you here? This was the question that Xiao Mu wanted to ask. She had nearly forgotten to ask after being interrupted by that group of royal guards. Me? I'm here to collect debts. Young Master Ding said with a smile, it's very difficult to do business these days. It won't do if you don't keep a close eye on them. Oh. The little stoic responded and stood up to say to everyone, let's leave after we finish eating. The frightened commoners in the lobby and the shopkeepers who only peeked their heads out of the cabinets looked dumbfoundedly at this young lady who suddenly stood up. Could it be that this young lady didn't see the group of people who had barged in? She called her companions to leave so easily? Just how big of a heart was this? At this time, the leader of the guard's complexion also turned ashen, and his gaze landed on Huang He. Chapter 2107. Seeing her sitting there motionless, the head of the guard simply had nowhere to vent his anger, and angrily rebuked, What are you all standing there for? Take him down. If there's any resistance, kill him on the spot. Arbor coldly snorted, What a big show! What a big show of power! Let me give you a piece of advice: if you don't want to die, then hurry and leave. Fairy Ginkgo also stood up, her slender waist swaying slightly as she seductively threw a coquettish glance at the head of the guards. The head of the guards stared blankly for a moment, then hurriedly regained his senses. His cold face flushed red, and he hurriedly shouted angrily, "Hurry and surround them! Yellow Crane, I advise you to surrender without putting up a fight. Don't cause any more trouble." Just as he finished speaking, a black figure slightly swayed in front of them, and instantly arrived in front of the head of the guards. "Where's all this nonsense coming from?" Emolien's palm slapped over, heavily landing on the other party's chest, directly sending that head of the guards flying backwards, crashing out of the door with a loud bang. After being stunned for a while, the head of the guards was unable to crawl up, and just as he raised his head, he started coughing out blood. Emolien's expression was indifferent as she stood at the entrance of the inn. With a light flick of her sleeve, the entire row of people standing there, along with their head of the guards, all fell out of the inn, like a human pyramid. Yo, they piled up into a pile. After cleaning up the eyesores in front of him, Prince Emo turned around, and his figure flashed back to his wifey's side. Naturally holding her little hand, he chuckled softly, "Let's go, Jojo, let's not bother with those idle people." Auber nodded her little head, and her little hand was held by him as they walked towards the side room on the second floor. Fairy Yellow Crane's head drooped, her face listless. "I've already escaped to here. I didn't expect that she still wouldn't let me go." Hearing this, Auber raised her little hand high and patted the back of her head. "I'm here for everything. What are you afraid of?" Fairy Yellow Crane was taken aback for a moment, then turned her head and smiled at her. "Isn't that so? We'll deal with whatever comes our way. At worst, we'll just kill them all." Fairy Ginkgo chuckled. If it wasn't for the perverse and ruthless look in her eyes, everyone in the hall would have thought that she was just joking. After everyone entered the room, they sat down in a circle. Auber extended his hand and retrieved a wisp of soul remembrance from the storage talisman. He glanced back at Little Tai Sway and said, "Let this dungeon rain stones." Little Tai Sway raised an eyebrow slightly. "Are you sure? This guy is just a spiritual sense body. With this rain of stones, he will definitely turn into ashes." No. The Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pengcheng, was so scared that his entire body was trembling. He knelt in the dungeon and continuously kowtowed to Auber. At this moment, he no longer cared about his dignity. All he wanted was his life. Unfortunately, Auber didn't have the slightest bit of pity for him. He glanced at Little Tai Sway and reached out to pound the dungeon. "Then let me do it." Gung Pengcheng still didn't understand the meaning of Auber's words. In the next second, that spiritual sense body seemed to have been pierced by a sharp blade. A transparent hole appeared in its body, and it held its head and screamed. Auber silently retracted his spiritual sense and glanced at him with a sneer. "Why haven't you told the truth yet?" I'll confess. Crown Princess, what do you want to play? This lowly one will definitely tell you everything he knows." Auber looked at him coldly. "Tell me, who are you working for? Why are you biting me so hard?" Chapter 2108. It's all my fault. It's me who targeted the Crown Princess. It's me who repeatedly sent people to kill the Crown Princess. Gung Pengcheng's spiritual consciousness avatar let out a miserable shriek. Auber looked at him expressionlessly and coldly. "Now that things have come to this, you'd better confess the truth. Who exactly are you working for? Speak." She didn't believe this person's lies. If one were to talk about interactions, before she stepped into Shuntian Prefecture, she had never met the Prefecture Lord of Shuntian Prefecture in her previous life. What she was sure of was that a person could not develop hatred for no reason. Emolien's face was also cold as he enunciated each word. "In the lower star domain, once you find this little lass, you must make sure that she doesn't have everything that goes her way, living like a piece of trash. She'll struggle at death's door like a dog and never see hope or end." She can't have the chance to go to the divine continent. Once any talent emerges, there's no need to wait for her to grow up miserably. Just obliterate her on the spot. These were memory fragments extracted from Lu Yiji's soul remembrance, and he still remembered each word very clearly. Now that he read it to Gung Pengcheng, his voice was low and pleasant, but even Endless Blade, who had very thick nerves, could hear the ruthlessness in his voice. Aber suddenly smiled and nodded. His spiritual consciousness condensed into a sword and pierced straight through Gung Pengcheng's shoulder. I've always been very curious about how I've offended you. Why did you have to mess with me like this? Making me live a miserable life and struggling at death's door like a dog. Is this the perfect life path you guys planned for me? Who would have thought that after I crawled out of hell, I would no longer follow the path you guys planned for me? My life would be like a wild horse that broke free of its reins and completely broke away from your control. So, you didn't have the patience to wait for me to come to a miserable end. You were anxious to get rid of me, right? Cough, cough, cough. Gung Pengcheng's spiritual consciousness avatar completely withered and collapsed in the dungeon. His eyes lost focus as he muttered to himself, Don't kill me, don't kill me. You're from Tianyun, right? Aber said coldly. Are Fan Chioha and Fan Gu your subordinates? Gung Pengcheng shook his head in a daze. You still want to lie? Emolien couldn't help but get angry. You really won't cry until you see the coffin. Since that's the case, I'll roast your spiritual sense body for 49 days and turn you into a tonic for my purple flame divine fire. Gung Pengcheng's pupils constricted, and his mind completely cleared. He struggled and shouted, Your Highness, spare my life. Your Highness, spare my life. Old Gung, made a move on the crown princess in a moment of confusion. But before that, I didn't even know the true identity of the crown princess. That's why. Shut up. Emolien shouted angrily. I don't know his identity? These words might work on children, but not on them. From the time he and Jojo were betrothed to the completion of the wedding ceremony, everything was under the eyes of the world. If Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord wanted to keep an eye on Jojo, how could he not know these details? He was probably afraid that Jojo would grow, so he did it on purpose. A cluster of burning purple flames suddenly fell on Prefecture Lord Gung's spiritual consciousness avatar. The scorching flames coldly covered his body, and a feeling of ice and fire alternating gradually spread in his heart. That burning sensation was truly too unbearable. Chapter 2109. Manor Lord Gung roared loudly, rolling back and forth in the small dungeon wrapped in a layer of purple flames. Aber watched coldly for a while, wondering inwardly, who on earth is it that made Gung Pengcheng suffer so much and still continues to protect him? She simply didn't believe that it was Gung Pengcheng's fault that he tried to kill her in both the past and present lives. How could there be love and hatred in this world for no reason? The person hiding behind him was too well hidden. Perhaps. Why don't we search his soul? Aber turned to look at Emolien and Yuan Shurchen. Can we search his soul based on his current appearance? Yuan Shurchen nodded. We can, but after we search his soul, he'll soon die and will no longer be able to live in this world. Before Aber could react, a tiny person huddled in a corner of the dungeon hastily crawled up and said anxiously, No, don't search my soul. My soul, you can't search it. Do you want to search it? No one would accept Gung Pengcheng's suggestion. Yuan Shurchen only turned to look at Aber, her expression telling her to make the decision. Aber nodded resolutely. Search. She wanted to see who it was that insisted on making enemies of her in both the past and present lives. Yuan Shurchen reached out her hand, and the dungeon was stuck to her palm. Gung Pengcheng's soul was trembling in fear. He kowtowed to Yuan Shurchen and said, No, don't kill me, really don't kill me. I've confessed everything, please let me go. As a terrifying force cut into the depths of his soul, Gung Pengcheng's body of spiritual sense gradually became weak and transparent. His whole body was like a small white flower swaying in a storm, on the verge of collapse. He looked somewhat pitiful. Suddenly, Gung Pengcheng's soul let out an earth-shattering roar. Yuan Shichen's body swayed slightly, and she actually retreated a few steps. Seeing this, Emo Lien supported him with one hand. With a wave of her sleeve, several purple flames soared and surrounded Gung Pengcheng, who was waiting for an opportunity to escape. Just now, because of the impact of the two forces, the earth pillars that were added to the prison had collectively disappeared. This cunning fellow had almost escaped. Yuan Shichen shook his head and looked angrily at Gung Pengcheng. There are at least 9 restrictions in this person's consciousness. I can't search his soul for now. 9 restrictions? What was he guarding against? Xiao Mu's eyes narrowed slightly. The more this was the case, the more interested she was in the things hidden in this person's brain. This Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord was truly generous. Since that was the case, Aber didn't want to talk to him anymore. He directly grabbed the person who was being burned by the purple flames. Since you're so unafraid of death, then I'll let you suffer a total of 49 days of burning. After saying that, he no longer looked at that person happily and directly stuffed Gung Pengcheng back into the storage talisman. Yuan Shichen smiled faintly. I'm guessing that he won't be able to make it through tonight. Meanwhile, the Emperor of Zhongzhou was sitting on the throne with hundreds of steps high above. He was staring at the painting presented by the third prince with a gloomy expression. Have you found out? It's true. The person that my fourth brother likes is probably the fiancé of the crown prince of the divine land. The Emperor of Zhongzhou only felt that his head was throbbing. His fourth son had come back. It didn't matter if he was not close to his old father. But now, what had happened? Chapter 21:10. The third prince even described the painting that Duan Yu had hidden under the desk with embellishment. In the end, he added, this son also discovered this painting by accident. That woman truly has limpid autumn waters and jade-like bones, and her icy beauty is unique in the world. This fake painting probably didn't even bring out 40% of her charm. No wonder fourth brother would be so attentive to this beauty. It's just that this fourth brother is too ruthless to actually poison the original painting. One of eldest brother's personal attendants was implicated like this and died from the poison. While the third prince prattled on incessantly, Crown Prince Rong Li merely stood barehanded in front of Zhongzhou's emperor without uttering a word. The second prince was all smiles as he looked up at the third prince from time to time, a meaningful smile on his lips. Their third brother how should they describe his temperament? On the bright side, he was frank, but on the other hand, he was brainless, easily angered, and impulsive. Royal Father's expression was truly unsightly. Enough! Zhongzhou's emperor shouted angrily and waved his hand at the eunuch on his left. Go call old fourth over. Seeing the emperor's wrath, the third prince kept quiet out of fear. Zhongzhou's emperor turned to look at the silent crown prince and suddenly asked, what is crown prince's opinion? Crown Prince Rong Li stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Royal Father, this son believes that fourth brother's actions are truly a bit foolish. If it's as old third said, and fourth brother secretly hid the painting of the future crown princess of the divine province, then, I'm afraid it's not conducive to the peaceful coexistence of Zhongzhou and the divine province. Nowadays, the situation in the world is changing unpredictably. Outside the 3 provinces, foreign countries and barbarian tribes frequently eye us covetously. Although Ming Province and us established a peaceful alliance 100 years ago, the vicissitudes of life have changed many times since then. How can we know if Ming Province is still as reliable as it was in the past? Although the 3 provinces coexist, everyone knows that the divine province is the strongest. Even though the divine province experienced that coup many years ago, it still stands at the pinnacle of the world. This son earnestly requests Royal Father to issue a decree to select a consort for fourth brother. This son believes that fourth brother merely has a youthful temperament and is young and dissolute. In the future, if this matter can be settled, it will definitely be a blessing for our Tsong province. The Zhongzhou emperor looked at Rong Li thoughtfully, nodded, and turned to the second prince. Second prince, what do you think? I think the crown prince is right. Rong silently lowered his eyes and sneered in his heart. His second brother's temperament was completely different from his third brother's, but his ostrich-like behavior was something that he despised. At least third brother still had some guts. As for second brother, he couldn't help but chuckle. "Your Majesty, the fourth prince has arrived. All of you can leave for now. Let fourth brother come in." Emperor Congzhou waved his hand. "Your son will take his leave." Rong Li and the other two bowed, then turned and walked out of the hall. The three of them saw their fourth brother walk in through the 4 vermilion doors that were wide open. Beneath her peerlessly beautiful appearance, she was dressed in a moon-white robe. Her long hair hung down to her waist and was not tied up. She looked lazy and undisciplined, but her eyes were sharp. When Rong Li glanced at her, he felt a chill run down his spine. Why was her gaze so sharp and piercingly cold? "Greetings, Royal Father." As the three of them left the hall, the 4 doors slowly closed. They could only vaguely hear their fourth brother's clear voice. Chapter 21:11. After Rong Li walked out of the hall, he glanced at his second brother and third brother but didn't speak. Third prince couldn't keep his composure, so he hastily grabbed Crown Prince Rong Li's sleeve as soon as he walked out of the hall. "Eldest brother, what do you think Royal Father will do? Why did you say something about fourth brother taking a consort just now? Shouldn't we tell Royal Father to severely punish this person who doesn't know the severity of things? As his eldest brother, I naturally can't watch him continue to make mistakes." Rong Li smiled faintly. A person who bitterly loves the future crown princess of the divine province won't have a good ending. Third prince was fuming with rage. "Shouldn't you be harshly complaining to Royal Father at a time like this? Mentioning those troublesome things means you're still pleading for leniency for him. If Royal Father really has the intention of taking a consort for him and marrying a young lady from a prestigious family, then wouldn't he look down on us brothers even more in the future? After all, he has already inherited the Devil Emperor's bloodline, and all the patrician families in Phoenix Emperor City are eagerly waiting to climb up the social ladder." "Old third don't fret over there." Second prince chuckled as he patted third prince's shoulder. He turned to the crown prince and said, "Eldest brother, third brother, I obtained several bottles of excellent wine 2 days ago. I wonder if you two could do me the honor of drinking a few cups with us 3 brothers? You're still in the mood to drink?" Third prince fumed with rage. "Okay." The crown prince nodded with a smile. The main hall instantly sunk into silence. After Duan Yu entered, he merely gave a simple bow to the emperor before silently standing at the foot of the steps. The great emperor looked at him with an exasperated expression. After a while, he picked up the fake painting and threw it at Duan Yu. "Look at it yourself." Duan Yu was baffled. He picked up the painting and scrutinized it for a long time before asking with a frown, "Who is this?" The emperor couldn't help but be amused. "Old third told me that the person in this painting is your sweetheart. However, this painting is very average and can't even compare to 3/10 of that young lady." Duan Yu threw that painting to the ground with an indifferent expression. "Just them? Worthy of a painting? Who knows what kind of dog asterisk T the person in this painting is? I don't know him." The great emperor roared, "Rong Li, Royal Father called this son over just to clarify the matter of this painting?" Duan Yu couldn't help laughing in exasperation. "Today, Imperial Father called you over. Do you think Imperial Father wants to reprimand you because of this painting?" Duan Yu remained silent as he coldly gazed at the person sitting on the throne. "You are my son. You are the Prince of Tsong Prefecture. What can't you have if you want it? Do you think you can get what you want by looking at a painting all day long?" Duan Yu's expression was a bit odd. He looked up at his own royal father and scrutinized him once more. The great emperor of the Congzhou continent looked like a man in his early 30s. Needless to say, the Rong family's appearance was outstanding. However, he thought that his imperial father, who was used to being high and mighty, would not be used to chatting with his son like this. Moreover, they were talking about inexplicable emotional matters. I can tell you with certainty that with your current cowardly appearance, you won't be able to obtain anything in the future, the great emperor of the Tsongzhou continent rebuked angrily. So what if she's the crown princess of the divine province? You're the son of my Tsongzhou continent's emperor. You don't lack any status. Wait. Chapter 21:12. If you don't fight or snatch, how will you obtain what you want? Tsongzhou's emperor said coldly. Duan Yu carefully scrutinized his father's expression. He felt like his father was a bit deranged right now and was in an extremely strange state. I don't want to fight, Duan Yu said indifferently. Duan Yu said very indifferently, do you think that everything in this world can be obtained by merely competing and robbing? But if you fight, you'll at least have a slim chance of survival. If you don't fight or snatch, you'll have nothing. Tsongzhou's emperor looked like he was exasperated at his son's failure to live up to his expectations as he sized up his foolish son. He looked like he couldn't get through, and just looking at him made him angry. Disappointing thing. You inherited the Devil Emperor's bloodline, so you'll definitely be the strongest person in our clan in the future. The entire Tsongzhou's future will be shouldered by you. Yet you can't even handle a little girl. Do you think you can get what you want by secretly drawing a painting and looking at it all day long? You're simply downright stupid. Duan Yu glanced at Tsongzhou's emperor. Royal father, you look like you can't get what you want. Did you not obtain the love of your life when you were young? Tsongzhou's emperor, you punk, father is telling you about your lousy affairs right now. What nonsense was he spouting? Duan Yu looked at him deeply. Royal father, you couldn't have fought with the current emperor of the divine province for a wife before, right? It had to be said that Duan Yu's words came true. Just by looking at Tsongzhou's ashen expression, Duan Yu knew that his guess was correct. No wonder he used that gaze to size him up. How was he sizing up Duan Yu? He was clearly looking at his past self. Duan Yu looked at Tsongzhou's emperor with a spurious smile and said, Royal father, don't overthink it. I won't walk the path of fighting. You probably fought and snatched back then, right? Duan Yu started stabbing his royal father's heart again. He coldly swept Tsongzhou's emperor a glance and said with a faint smile, But what's the use of fighting? Didn't you return disappointed in the end? You. Rong Xian felt like he was about to explode from anger because of his son. Poking at his sore spot in such a leisurely and indifferent manner was simply hateful. Emperor Tsongzhou seemed to see the back of the beautiful woman who had left him all those years ago. In that instant, he actually stared blankly at Duan Yu. Duan Yu naturally wouldn't wait for him to recover his senses. Although he had followed his mother back to Tsong Prefecture, deep down, he was still very resistant to the Tsong Prefecture Emperor. After saying this, Duan Yu turned to walk out of the main hall. If there is nothing else, this son will take his leave first. The Tsongzhou Emperor shot up from his seat and glared at his son. This unfilial son. He hadn't even finished speaking when his muddle-headed son hurriedly turned around and left. Was there such an urgent matter? Do you still have any respect for your father? Staring at Duan Yu's departing figure, the great emperor of Tsongzhou stared blankly for a long while before letting out a long sigh and slumping into his chair, somewhat dispirited. As far as the eye could see, the hall was completely empty. He didn't know why, but his heart also felt a little empty. In his hazy state, he seemed to be able to see that woman's beautiful smile swaying in front of him. Sigh. The past was already in the past, and it was simply impossible to retrieve it. Chapter 21:13. After Duan Yu exited the main hall, he looked up at the afterglow of the setting sun before walking toward Taiji Palace. Compared to Taiji Palace, he actually preferred the slightly more remote South Chiao Hall. At least when he was in South Chiao Hall, he didn't feel as empty and frustrated as when he was in Taiji Palace. That Taiji Palace was too empty. He really didn't like it. He slowly walked along the towering palace walls. Duan Yu wasn't in a hurry at all, and his footsteps were also very slow. Suddenly, a person with a lowered head walked over from the corner of the palace walls and nearly bumped into him. Duan Yu swiftly retreated 2 steps to avoid this collision. The person was taken aback, and when he looked up at him, his eyes instantly emitting a glint. "Your Highness Prince Chanchen." Duan Yu swept him a glance and discovered that it was the young royal guard who accompanied Wu Yong to escort him back to the palace. He was a bit irritated by his rash behavior. "Your Highness Prince Chen, are you returning to Taiji Palace? How about this humble one send you back?" Duan Yu's figure flashed and floated past him. With his speed, if he wanted to get away from certain things, it was absolutely impossible for others to catch up to him. As a result, the young royal guard could only dazedly stay where he was and hang his head dejectedly. He only wanted to send His Highness off. Was this also wrong? My Chao's section break, Yuan Shichen's conjecture was correct. It wasn't even night yet, but Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord Gung Pengcheng, who had been tormented and shaken to his soul, was already impatient to confess. Abba pulled him out of the storage talisman and coldly looked at him. "Speak." She had wasted nearly a day with this old man and was already very irritated, so she didn't feel like continuing to be long-winded with him. "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me everything you know, word for word." Spare me, spare me. Crown Princess, Your Highness the Crown Prince, can you first remove these layers of purple flames on this humble one's body?" He was simply about to be burned to death. These purple flames made him suffer immensely. In the end, even with his tenacious willpower, he was unable to resist this wave of trampling and could only submit to the little devil in front of him. A lowly prisoner actually dares to make conditions with this crown prince? Emolien gave a cold laugh. Purple flames appeared on his fingertips again. Seeing that he was about to increase the intensity of the flame, Gung Pengcheng's spiritual sense body immediately screamed in fear. I'll tell you. Gung Pengcheng knew that this matter could no longer be concealed even if he wanted to. Thus, under Emolien's cold gaze, she braced herself and said, "Crown Princess, you guessed it right. This lowly one has indeed been working for Master. It's just that this lowly one doesn't understand why Master must target the Crown Princess." "Who's your master?" Abba felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest when he asked. Soon. She was just half a step away from finding out who it was in her previous life that forced her to grow up according to their planned growth trajectory. This problem that had troubled her for so many years was about to be easily solved. "I don't know my master's name." Gung Pengcheng's words instantly made Abba's heart sink. Seeing her unworried expression, Gung Pengcheng hurriedly added, "But he's definitely a man. Although I don't know his age and appearance. But from his voice, he's still quite young. I'll sleep and wake up to make up for it." Chapter 21:14. Every time he came to issue a mission, he would just stand there from afar, and a maidservant would come forward to explain clearly to us. That's why I've only seen him a few times from afar. I really can't see his appearance clearly. Abba's lips revealed a trace of mockery as he nodded and said, "Oh? Are you sure?" I can be sure I can." Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord Gung Pengcheng was like a frightened quail. He pretended to hug his transparent head with both hands and trembled as he said, "Crown Princess, this lowly one is absolutely not lying." Abba's gaze became exceptionally deep and cold as he swept a glance at Gung Pengcheng. With a wave of his sleeve, he nodded and said, "At least you're sensible." The lotus-colored sleeve swept over Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord Gung Pengcheng's head, shocking him so much that his old face turned pale. Originally, he thought that the little girl's move was to put him in a situation of total annihilation. However, it didn't. She didn't do anything. It was as if her sleeve really had carelessly brushed over his head. "Husband, it's getting late. Let's go back and rest." Emolien glanced at Gung Pengcheng and nodded. She held the little fellow's hand and walked out to the next room. Everyone also walked out one by one and returned to their respective rooms to rest. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Only Gung Pengcheng, who was placed on the table and locked in the dungeon, was left in a corner of the dungeon, muttering something to himself. It was night. The stars were completely hidden under the dark curtain of the sky. Outside, it started to drizzle again. These few days, it was as if they had entered the rainy season. Every few days, there would be a rainstorm. When they went out, they would always be wet, causing the number of small merchants and peddlers on the streets during the day to decrease by 2/3. At night, the streets were deserted. Gung Pengcheng sat in the dungeon with a dazed expression, his eyes somewhat blank. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly floated by outside the window and suddenly appeared in the room. Gung Pengcheng's spirit was roused. He opened his mouth to say something, but suddenly realized that no matter how he spoke, his voice seemed to be stuck in his throat. He couldn't even utter a single syllable. He tried to utter a few simple words, but to no avail. His spiritual sense body suddenly trembled, and a bad premonition slid through his heart. That vicious little girl did it on purpose. She deliberately left him alone in this room, using him as bait to catch her accomplice. She knew that someone would come. Gung Pengcheng was a little flustered. He wanted to rush to the front of the dungeon, but he waved his hands to signal the black-clothed man not to come over. But unexpectedly, a few pieces of earth and rocks fell from the top of the dungeon, smashing him down. His spiritual sense body was greatly damaged, and his whole body became more and more transparent and ethereal. He didn't even have the strength to move a finger. The black shadow did not hesitate for long. He had already arrived in front of the table and grabbed the dungeon with one hand. His sharp eyes glanced back, and with a whoosh, he went out of the window. Gung Pengcheng's heart was filled with anxiety, but he couldn't say anything. He could only watch as the man took him away along with the dungeon. After walking for about half a li, they entered an abandoned house. The man closed the door, and then looked down at Gung Pengcheng in the dungeon. He sneered and said, "You actually made yourself look like a ghost. Tiske, you're really useless." Chapter 21:15. If Master hadn't sensed that your spiritual sense had been attacked by an external force and sensed that you might be in danger, I wouldn't have been able to find you. I wouldn't have followed that spiritual wave to find you. The black-clothed man crossed his arms and said coldly, "Gung Pengcheng, you're really getting worse and worse. You can't even deal with a few young people? What can you do on a normal day?" Gung Pengcheng still hadn't recovered. Sitting in the dungeon, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Idiot, idiot, idiot. If those people were really young people, would it be possible for his soul to be seized by them? Could he have become as miserable as he was now? This person didn't even know that he was in a desperate situation. However, he couldn't even protect himself, let alone the person in front of him. Gung Pengcheng sighed. No wonder the little girl was willing to leave him in the room like this, and wasn't worried that he would leak the secret of her spiritual paradise. Because he couldn't do anything at all. If that girl had the secret of the spiritual paradise, and he couldn't reveal it to that person, then, in the future, that person might also suffer a great loss in the hands of that damned girl. Damn it! Gung Pengcheng was very depressed, but at this moment, he was completely helpless. The black-clothed man in front of him continued to mock him. "If it wasn't for the fact that you still have some use, I think Master would have given you up. But you're already like this now. If you want to help Master accomplish anything, it's completely impossible." The black-clothed man sneered. "Who was that you in Shuntian Prefecture? Why aren't you talking? Could it be that you were smashed silly by those stones just now? Useless thing." At this point, the black-clothed man felt that there was something wrong with Gung Pengcheng. Because from the time they entered the room until now, a full half an hour had passed. And Gung Pengcheng hadn't said a word from beginning to end. Wasn't this a bit strange? "Gung Pengcheng, why aren't you talking?" Gung Pengcheng was suffering from speechlessness, and he couldn't point out anything to the fool in front of him. The black-clothed man frowned. He strolled to the table and lowered his head to look at Manor Lord Gung, who seemed to be on the verge of death. His eyes revealed traces of mockery. "What Manor Lord of Shuntian Prefecture? You can't even compare to me, a slave who follows master. Back then, master was really blind to actually choose such an ugly thing like you. A trace of anger flashed across Gung Pengcheng's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he had followed that person for so many years and was one of that person's rare confidants, he would have already... Long ago what? Gung Pengcheng couldn't help but smile bitterly. At this moment, he couldn't even lift a finger, so how could he talk about punishing the arrogant person in front of him? Suddenly, Gung Pengcheng's eyes widened as he stared at the man's back with a strange and frightened expression. His mouth fell open. Seeing Gung Pengcheng's strange expression, the black-clothed man frowned in disdain. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll bring you back to see master. As for how to deal with you, it's naturally up to master to decide. As soon as the man finished speaking, he saw that Gung Pengcheng was still abnormally frightened. He couldn't help but snort coldly and wanted to say a few words of mockery to this former high and mighty manor lord of Shuntian Prefecture. Unexpectedly, an ice-cold hand reached out from behind him and firmly grasped his neck. Who is your master? A faint voice sounded from the side. Make up for yesterday's 2 chapters. Chapter 21:16. That person turned his neck stiffly and glanced to the side, only to see a plainly dressed young girl standing not far from him, coldly watching him. The black-clothed man made a sound that was similar to a turkey being twisted by its neck. Emolienne glanced at him coldly and swept the black cloth on his face to the ground with a wave of her hand. This was the face of a commoner that wouldn't make a splash in a crowd. Arba glanced at him coldly and took a few steps forward. A sharp white icicle suddenly appeared in her small hand. You, what do you want to do? Ah! The black-clothed man looked at her with a face full of terror, his entire body uncontrollably trembling. What do I want to do? Arba glanced at him coldly and said expressionlessly, What do you think? Ah! That person's scream was instantly stuck in his throat when Emolienne tightened her grip on his neck. The icicle in Arba's hand had already slid down inch by inch from the back of that person's ear. Her hand that was used to using needles and knives didn't make any sound when she cut that person's skin. Her strength was also very fast and accurate, cutting down half an inch below that person's skin. The black-clothed man's neck was held in Emolienne's hand and he couldn't even tremble if he wanted to. He could only stiffly hang in the air like a dead fish. Emolienne very disdainfully extended her arm and pushed that person far away. She even knitted her brows and coldly said, Unbearably stinky. Xiao Mu blinked her large eyes and looked up at her dear husband. Her hands sped up, peeling off that person's fake face with a swish. Skadiske, you really don't know what's good for you. Ku Chen chuckled and walked up to scrutinize the black-clothed person. Yo! And it's a woman. Wow, so impressive, so impressive. Let me see. Limitless Blade hurriedly came forward, admiring the woman in front of him as if he was watching a live animal. At this time, the man in black was already scared out of his wits. His whole body was trembling, and even his eyes had lost focus. He just looked at Arba casually. Arba was very impatient. He swept his palm over and landed heavily on that person's face. Stop pretending. Your acting is so bad. Do you still want people to believe you? The woman, whose eyes were originally unfocused, was slapped so hard that her left cheek swelled up, and her eyes became extremely fierce and evil. You little b asterisk tch. Shameless b asterisk tch. My master won't let you off. Just kill me. Don't even think about getting the slightest bit of information from me. She cursed like a madwoman, her eyes emitting traces of poisonous light. Emolienne loosened her grip and threw the woman to the ground. She took a clean handkerchief and slowly wiped her hands. She threw the handkerchief at that person's feet, and a cluster of black flames instantly spread from the handkerchief, burning it to ashes. The fire also sprang up from the woman's feet and instantly enveloped her in layers of holy fire. Ah! Oh! The woman screamed in agony and rolled around on the ground. The black flames were very mysterious. They didn't burn anything in the room. They only enveloped the woman and roasted her with all their might, as if trying to drive her soul out of her body. Abba pattered to her husband's side and raised a hand to calm him down. She didn't care what this woman was saying. Chapter 21:17. In any case, this person was already a dead person in her eyes. The woman rolled back and forth on the ground. At this moment, her face had already been burned beyond recognition, and there wasn't a single patch of skin left untouched. Enveloped in a layer of black flames, she reached out to touch her face in horror. When she touched her face, she discovered that her eyes, nose, and eyebrows were all on fire, and her face was in excruciating pain. The fire on her face was much smaller than the fire on her body. Like a frog being boiled in warm water, it continued to burn her face, but didn't go any further and turn her face into something like a pancake. The woman scurried and rolled all over the floor. Wherever she rolled, the people there would indifferently take a step back. They watched her perform her tumbling skills in the central room by herself. Abba was speechless. He suddenly reached out and sprinkled a snow pearl, which whooshed down beside the woman. When the snow pearl touched the sacred fire, the layers of black flames enveloping the woman's body quickly and obediently retreated. Emolyen's anger still hadn't subsided. She tightly gripped the little fellow's hand, and her voice contained a hint of anger. "Why did you save her? She doesn't know the difference between life and death. Just burn her alive." Abba hurriedly reached out to comfort him. He blinked and said, "I still have something to ask her. You filthy woman, you lowly slut. I won't tell you anything. I definitely won't betray my master. You only know how to flaunt your prowess by relying on men. You bitch." Ah! A beam of wood spirit instantly struck her mouth, knocking out a mouthful of her teeth. "What do you want to hear from her if her mouth stinks?" He-chan said unhappily. Abba saw the anger on everyone's faces. He couldn't help but wave his hand and say, "Why are you bickering with a dead person? Let me ask her first." Bah! The woman, whose teeth had fallen out, felt that she couldn't even speak properly. She angrily snorted and said, "In your dreams. Didn't you say that I flaunt my prowess by relying on men? Then I'll give you a chance to challenge me," Abba coldly interrupted her. "As long as you defeat me, I'll let you go. How about it?" The woman's expression froze, but she did not notice that behind her, Manor Head Gung was shaking his head vigorously. He couldn't speak, but he wanted to remind this woman. Abba coldly glanced at Manor Head Gung, revealing a cold and resolute expression. "Gung Pengcheng, this old fox, still wants to trick me?" It was obvious that he wasn't telling the truth. He was quite loyal to the person behind him. If it wasn't for the fact that she felt that she wouldn't be able to dig out any useful information from Gung Pengcheng, why would she deliberately set up a small trap to lure him into the trap? Sure enough, leaving Gung Pengcheng in the room, someone really barged in like a fool that night. The woman in front of him didn't even seem to have half of Gung Pengcheng's intelligence. The woman hesitated, but she didn't turn around to look at Manor Head Gung, so she didn't notice the anxious look on Manor Head Gung's face as he silently called out to her. "All right. I promise you." The woman nodded heavily. Now, she could feel that the auras of the people around the girl were light, but their auras were extremely heavy. It was obvious that the people around her were all people with extremely high cultivations. And this damned girl in front of her was only relying on those people's power to be so arrogant and despotic. Master had already told them about this. That girl had been raised in the countryside since she was young. She was already extremely lucky to have been able to trigger her meridians in this lifetime. Chapter 21:18. Could it be that she was delusional enough to think she could break through to the spirit realm? Or even the god realm? Ha ha ha. Don't joke around. She was merely a good-for-nothing who was raised in the countryside. Without the help of those people with extremely high cultivation, what could she do? Gung Pengcheng's pupils abruptly contracted, and his expression changed from anxious to nervous to angry, embarrassed, and disappointed. Finally, his face turned ashen. If the woman in black was willing to turn her head to look at him, she would definitely find his appearance extremely fascinating. Meanwhile, Gung Pengcheng's current thoughts were, "Can't this D***M idiot turn her head to look at me? It's too bad I can't speak." Manor Head Gung felt like he was about to suffocate to death. He glared angrily at that conceited woman and wished for nothing more than to howl at the sky. "Idiot! Who would dare to provoke you like this if they didn't have some skill?" Judging from this woman's disdainful attitude, it was obvious. She didn't care about the little stoic in front of her at all. She would definitely suffer a loss and be tricked right now. The two of them flew out of the dilapidated shack and stood in a small clearing in the front yard. This dilapidated residence was extremely dilapidated, and there was a small, abandoned nursery in the front yard. The woman's face was burned beyond recognition. She stood next to the abandoned nursery with narrowed eyes, glaring fiercely at Arbor in front of her. Heh! The woman took out a double-edged blade from her inner world with a wave of her hand. The sharp blade emitted a faint black light in the darkness. "Don't blame the heavens and accuse others if you seek your own death." Arbor glanced at her coldly and didn't say anything. He reached out and grabbed the ferrule in his hand. "It's still unknown who will win and who will lose. Don't be overconfident. You'll know whether I'm overconfident or not after we fight." The woman in black shouted angrily, and the double-edged blade was flung out of her hand with a whoosh. It spun in Arbor's direction. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of wind followed. Chow Mu didn't even dodge. Instead, she directly stretched out a small, lustrous hand and formed a spiritual energy defense circle around her, blocking the double-faced blade that was spinning rapidly toward her. Huff, 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 huff. The double-faced blade was blocked by the airflow, making it even harder for it to advance. However, it didn't last long against Arbor's spiritual power. It suddenly turned around and returned to the black-clothed woman's hand. The black-clothed woman's aura was extremely swift and fierce as she slashed out with her saber wind. Arbor didn't even look at her. With a slight movement of his body, he had already escaped from her saber wind. After a few times, the woman also knew that her movements were flexible, and her footwork was one of a kind in the world. If she relied solely on speed, it was absolutely impossible for her to catch up to this stoic face in front of her. The black-clothed woman's eyes flashed. Then, she threw out dozens of paper charms from under her sleeves. Then, she threw them in front of Arbor. All the talismans were shaken away in front of Arbor. The talisman power was vast and mighty, and it simultaneously pressed down on Arbor. Arbor didn't feel surprised, as if she had already seen through the woman's identity. She merely hooked the corners of her mouth coldly, and her fingers moved swiftly. Several hundred talismans were then flung out by her, and they all rushed toward the talisman power that was sweeping over. The black-clothed woman was completely stunned this time. She stood there dumbfounded in shock. What was going on? This little slut in front of her was actually a rare talisman master? If not, how could she have so many talismans on her body? Chapter 21:19. He casually tossed out hundreds of talismans, and all of them were released? A talisman master? Even a talisman master couldn't be so generous. How difficult was it for a talisman master to draw talismans? Even her master couldn't be so extravagant. It was as if it was a complete waste of resources. And how could a woman from the lower star region become a talisman master? This absolutely didn't make sense. The black-clothed woman's eyes trembled as she exclaimed, How is this possible? Where did the talismans on you come from?" Arbor glanced at her coldly and said indifferently, "It has nothing to do with you. You're from a talisman patrician family, right?" Arbor's words weren't a question but a confirmation. A cold light flickered in the depths of her eyes as she tapped the ferrule in her hand. "Tell me, how should I deal with you, The woman didn't speak, but the emotions flowing from her eyes had already revealed everything. She was indeed from a talisman patrician family. In a flash, a trace of coldness flitted across Arba's eyes. "Go to hell!" the black-clothed woman screamed in anger and humiliation. She abruptly took out a black talisman filled with many strange characters from her inner world. "Slut! Today, let me teach you a lesson. What is called ignorant arrogance and narrow-minded." With that, the talisman suddenly turned into a stream of light and flew in Arba's direction. Ha! A puppet talisman. Arba recognized it at a glance. Displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert, actually using a puppet talisman in front of her. Did she think a puppet talisman of this level would be able to trick her? Simply laughable. Arba took a step forward and arrived in front of the black-clothed woman. She completely ignored the light from the talisman and directly flung her sleeve, sending her flying. The woman was immediately stunned. She simply didn't expect Arba to be able to break the power of a talisman. How was this possible? This wasn't an ordinary talisman, but a talisman, a puppet talisman. Who could break the power of a puppet talisman? Only, the black-clothed woman's pupils constricted and she almost cried out involuntarily, You're a charm master. You're a talisman master, ah." This slut was actually a terrifying existence like a charm master? Arba's cold voice rang in her ears. "Congratulations, you got it right. Let me show you what a charm is." Arba coldly stared at the woman. With a wave of his sleeve, dozens of profound talismans flew out, turning into a dozen or so streaks of black light that rushed towards the woman. His speed was extremely shocking, causing the woman to be dazed and unable to move as she fell to the ground. Since her identity as a charm master had been exposed, there was no need for this woman to continue living. With a flick of her finger, Xiao Mu guided those several dozen streaks of light from talismans into the woman's body. How could the woman in black dodge? In the blink of an eye, she had already been hit by dozens of talisman lights. With a miserable howl, she slid along the ground and rolled several times. A gloomy chill emerged from the soles of his feet. This was a very frightening feeling. It wasn't ice cold, but a bone-chilling cold. This kind of cold was completely different from being attacked by a water spirit. The woman in black's entire body trembled, and she couldn't stop trembling from the depths of her bones. Chapter 21:20. She curled up into a ball and stared at Arba with terrified eyes. "No, that's impossible. How could this be?" She had lost a mouthful of teeth to He Chen earlier, and now that the Yin energy had entered her body, her speech became increasingly unclear. Arba didn't waste any more words with her. She walked over to her with a cold expression and raised several dozen icicles in her hand. "You can die now. Don't kill me. Don't kill me." The black-clothed woman shrieked, trembling. I can tell you who sent me. Don't kill me." Arba's expression relaxed slightly. "Oh, yes, it really is a talisman patrician clan. It's that one from our Mu clan." "Ah." The woman's throat was suddenly struck by a streak of black light. She fell backward and sprawled on the ground with a thump. Her eyes widened and her mouth gaped open. Beads of blood gurgled out of her throat, and in a flash, she lost all signs of life. Arba abruptly turned her head and glared viciously at Gung Pengcheng in the dungeon. At this time, Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord Gung Pengcheng had already swelled up in the dungeon. Not good, he's going to self-detonate his spiritual sense. Shichen flitted past and arrived in front of Xiao Mu. He grabbed her wrist and yanked her entire petite body backward. Mo Lien and the little Tai Sui had already joined forces and set up a defensive barrier in front of everyone. "Let's go." Everyone quickly retreated. As for Gung Pengcheng, his faint soul projection had already swelled so much that it was impossible to make out his original appearance. "What a prefecture Lord Gung," He Chen sneered. "This person is really courageous. How could an ordinary person be willing to self-detonate their spiritual sense and seek their own destruction? Once their spiritual sense self-detonated, not even a shard of their soul would be left behind. To put it bluntly, their entire person would disappear from the world. They wouldn't even have a chance to be reborn. In order to prevent the black-clothed woman from revealing the mastermind behind her actions, Gung Pengcheng had already done all this. For Gung Pengcheng to be able to reach such a level, it was truly impressive. Boom! Boom! Following the loud explosion, everyone felt the ground under their feet shake a few times. Dao Wuji and the others covered their eyes with their hands and took a few steps back. This kind of spiritual awareness self-detonation was more than 3 times stronger than the self-detonation of the main body. Gung Pengcheng, this little spirit master, had also fought to a certain extent. He wondered how the person behind the scenes whom he was trying so hard to protect had managed to subdue such a loyal person. Does the Divine Prefecture's talisman patrician family have anything to do with the heavenly fate cult? Little Tai Sui suddenly asked. Ma Yingchen shook her head. I can't be sure about this. There's no concrete evidence to prove that the talisman aristocratic family is related to the heavenly fate organization. Of course. In the future we might be able to prove it. Everyone turned to look at Arba. They saw her pursing her lips tightly, and her stoic little face clearly had a very displeased expression. Jojo, now we can be absolutely sure that someone doesn't want you to return to the Mu family of Shenzhou. Emolian pulled on her little hand and said indifferently, this person has always been hiding in the Mu family of Shenzhou. Even if we investigate in the future, we have a definite direction. The follow-up is only a matter of time. Emolian's soft comforting words entered Arba's ears. Hearing this, she nodded. After a long while she said indifferently, I lost this round. Chapter 21-21. Everyone turned back to look at her in a daze. The little stoic pursed her lips and expressionlessly said, however, it's still unknown who will emerge victorious next time. She had indeed lost this time. She had wasted so much effort to capture these 2 people, but she was unable to pry anything substantial out of their mouths. That person from the talisman family was truly a talent. He was an expert at using people and also an expert at wielding power. Presumably, there would naturally be a confrontation in the future. At that time, Arba silently lowered her eyes. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, she heard Hu Shechen sneer beside her. TSK, you can't even rest in peace after death. He pointed over, and a green streak of light flew past Arba with a whoosh and abruptly landed on a thin and faintly discernible lampwick-shaped fiery red object. After a soft sound, the light wick that couldn't be any fainter twisted slightly in front of everyone, and it instantly disappeared into nothingness. Gung Pengcheng's life lamp miniature? Arba's heart skipped a beat. If Hu Shechen hadn't acted in time and allowed Gung Pengcheng's miniature to bounce back, it would have definitely caused great waves. Hu Shechen nodded. He could still leave behind a life lamp remnant after self-detonating his spiritual sense. Arba's resentment toward this person increased. He truly spared no effort to sell his life to his master. He used the last of his essence blood to condense a life lamp remnant. Hu Shechen sneered. Unfortunately, it fell short at the final stage. Arba nodded. Her disgust toward Gung Pengcheng's disciple had already risen to the peak. Back then, I seem to have wronged Mu Jingrui. Arba said indifferently, I even thought that Mu Jingrui sent Fan Gu to kill me because I refused to return to the Mu family. From the looks of it now, it should be certain that this Fan Gu and Fan Choha are also 2 small chess pieces in the hands of the mastermind behind the Mu family. She had lost this time. Although she was somewhat unwilling, a loss was a loss. The future was long, so let's wait and see. After tossing and turning for the better part of the night, everyone was a bit tired. Hence, they silently returned to the inn to continue resting. The next day, everyone woke up rather late. Only when the sun was high in the sky did they come downstairs one by one. Naturally, the little yellow crane did not know what had happened last night. She had been busy with Yunshue's cremation for the past 2 days. With everyone gathered, Fairy Yellow Crane fell silent for a moment before saying, I plan to return to the main residence. The Ginkgo Fairy's chopsticks paused, and she couldn't help but roll her eyes at her. I say, miss, are you tired of living? Do you want to throw yourself into a trap and go back to experience a bloody storm? I came out in a hurry that day, so I didn't pack my things. Arbor waved his hand disapprovingly. Just buy a new one. Fairy Yellow Crane pursed her lips and said hesitantly, I have 2 very precious handwritten copies of medical books. I was reading them in my room that day and forgot to put them in my inner world. Arbor was stunned and turned to look at her. I have a few handwritten copies too. Let me lend them to you. As he spoke, he took out one of Long Chiyun's handwritten copies and tossed it in front of Yellow Crane. Yellow Crane hurriedly and carefully received it. She flipped through 2 pages, and her eyes immediately lit up. After the meal, Yellow Crane held the book and read it as if she was intoxicated, ignoring everyone else. Jojo, can you lend me this medical book for 2 more days? Where is she? Chapter 21-22. When she raised her head, she discovered that Arbor had already left at some point. Jojo said he's lacking some mid-grade medicinal ingredients, so he dragged Emolien to the pharmacy to buy them. Ah? Yellow Crane Fairy asked with a puzzled expression. Jojo wants to refine pills? Amen. The Peony Fairy waved a small red brocade fan, lazily leaning on the armchair. Shaking the fan, she nodded and said, Jojo seems to be lacking something. What is it called? 3 leaves. 3-leaf clover? Mid-grade medicinal ingredients? 3-leaf flower. Yellow Crane Fairy said with black lines on her forehead. Ah, right, it's that 3-leaf flower. Yellow Crane suddenly stared blankly, excitedly grabbing Peony's hand and shouting, Sister Peony, could it be that Jojo is refining spirit-gathering pills? Peony was dumbfounded by her question. How could she know what kind of pill Arbor wanted to refine by buying that nuisance 3-leaf clover? However, being called sister by Yellow Crane, she was somewhat elated. Thus, she smiled amiably at Yellow Crane and said, Probably. I'll go take a look. Yellow Crane Fairy immediately jumped up and said with a face full of excitement. Hey, come back. The Peony Fairy hurriedly reached out and grabbed her, pressing her back into the chair. What are you going to do? The young couple is shopping, and you're going to be a lit candle. If boss sees you, he definitely won't be happy. Yellow Crane Fairy was a bit stunned by what she said. Kiki, I just want to observe her refining pills and learn from her experience. Hey, then wait for her to come back. The Peony Fairy rolled her eyes at her. She can't stay on the street refining pills, right? Oh, okay then. Then, Sister Peony, I'll go read first. The dazed Yellow Crane Fairy nodded, then picked up the medical book and read it as if she was intoxicated. The corner of Peony's mouth twitched, and she looked at her speechlessly. An ignorant and incompetent person like her would have a headache whenever she flipped open a book. There was no need to ask her to read books in this lifetime. It was impossible for her to be like Fairy Huang He, who was completely immersed in the medicine encyclopedia. That would be impossible, even in her next life. On the other side, Prince Emo and Miss Chow were strolling on the streets hand in hand, and they turned a blind eye to the gazes of the passers-by. The passers-by were also somewhat amused. A young lad who didn't look where he was walking and only stared at the little stoic actually bumped his head into someone else's shoulder pole. He rubbed his forehead in pain and was about to cry. When she saw a Liang Yuan medicine shop in the distance, Chow Mu stopped and sniffed. Lien, I smell a very fragrant radish biscuit. The little thing was hungry. Emolien couldn't help but laugh. She raised her hand to stroke the little fellow's head and pointed to the alley next to them. Then I'll go and buy it, okay? Miss Chow nodded. Then wait for me at the pharmacy. Okay. Arbor naturally nodded cheerfully and agreed. After waving goodbye to Emolien, the little fellow walked toward Liang Yuan Pharmacy with light steps. This Liang Yuan Pharmacy was located in a troublesome area, so its business was naturally excellent. The pharmacy's shopkeeper was a rare person with a conscience. Even when the plants were withering and medicinal herbs were in short supply, he still insisted on not raising the price. As a result, many people from other cities came here especially to buy his medicinal herbs after hearing his reputation. As soon as Auber walked through the door, a shop assistant immediately walked over with a face full of smiles and enthusiasm. "Hello, customer. Welcome, welcome." Chapter 21-23. When he saw Auber's face clearly, the shop assistant was obviously stunned, and his attitude became even more respectful. "Miss, are you here to buy medicinal herbs?" Auber nodded. "Do you have the 3-leaf flower?" Yes. The shop assistant nodded repeatedly. "How many do you want, miss?" "I'll take as many as you have," Auber said indifferently. The shop assistant was immediately overjoyed. This was a big business opportunity. Thus, he hurriedly went to report to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper jogged all the way over, his Maitreya Buddha-like face filled with a kind smile. "Miss, our shop has more than 5,200 3-leaf flowers. 3 spirit coins per flower. Do you want all of them?" The 3-leaf flower was only a mid-grade medicinal herb, and 3 spirit coins was already a sky-high price. The shopkeeper was worried that Auber would find it too expensive, so he added, "If Miss wants all of them at once, we'll round off the change. How about 15,000 spirit coins from Miss?" Auber nodded. "Sure." The shopkeeper was overjoyed and hurriedly said to her, "Then Miss, please rest in the shop for a while. I'll instruct someone to bring all the 3-leaf flowers over." Auber waved her hand. "I'll just walk around. You guys go ahead." The shopkeeper beamed and hurriedly brought the shop assistant to the warehouse in the back hall to prepare the 3-leaf flowers. Selling out all the 3-leaf flowers in a day was quite a big business. After all, mid-grade medicinal herbs like the 3-leaf flower were still commonly seen. Although the world's vegetation was withered, it was not a black-grade or sky-grade medicinal herb, so it was still relatively easy to find. Auber had nothing to do, so she strolled around the shop. This Liang Yuan medicine shop was quite big, and it was divided into 2 floors. Naturally, the second floor sold some more expensive medicinal herbs. After Miss Chiao walked around the first floor, she went up to the second floor to take a look. All the medicinal herbs on the second floor were listed in transparent crystal display cabinets. Many of them were kept in jade boxes, and their names were marked on them. They would not be easily shown to others unless you were sure that you wanted to buy the medicinal herb. Only then would the shopkeeper take out the jade box for you to see. After all, if every poor person came over and said that they wanted to look at the medicinal herbs and did not buy them after looking at them, the medicinal properties of these precious medicinal herbs would soon dissipate in the air. Auber wandered in front of the display cabinets a few times, but didn't see anything he wanted. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly noticed a plant with drooping leaves on an ordinary table next to the display case. She hurriedly walked over and circled around the small cabinet, secretly clicking her tongue in wonder. Wasn't this Tian Xingzi? She had seen it in Long Chiyun's notes. Tian Xingzi liked water and yin, but it had to be planted in water. If it was planted in a soil basin, wouldn't it speed up its death? Tian Xingzi's item was the main ingredient for making mystic-level neurotoxins. This neurotoxin could cause hallucinations to appear before the eyes of any soul master below level 10 after being poisoned. It was as if they were in a dream. After 4 hours, they would die with a slight smile on their face before they died. It was such a waste for such a useful neurotoxin to be thrown into a dirt basin. Miss Chiao circled around Tian Xingzi and raised her eyes to look at a shop assistant standing at the side. She waved at him and said, "Hey, wrap this up for me." "Yo, is this a gift?" A slightly aged female voice came from the side. Auber turned around and saw a mother and daughter standing in front of the display case diagonally opposite her, looking at her. Chapter 21-24. Both of them looked wealthy and slightly plump. Their clothes were also very exquisite, and it could be seen that they were women from wealthy families. Auber glanced at them and shook her head. "It's not a gift." The young woman's round face immediately revealed disdain. She stared at the Tian Xingzi with drooping leaves in front of Arbor and said, "This thing's leaves are drooping. It's already rotten." Arbor blinked and glanced at the Tian Xingzi again. She couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the mother and daughter and said to the shop assistant standing awkwardly at the side, "How much?" "Wrap it up." "Pfft." The young woman snickered. She moved closer to her mother and said disdainfully, "Mom, don't be like this in the future. Don't even ask about that kind of trash. If we're going to buy it, we'll buy the best. Don't buy this kind of trash. It's not like our family doesn't have money." That little stoic really looked like an immortal, but the things she did really made people look down on her. That, "Wrap it up, how much?" made her seem like a nouveau riche and bought something extremely precious. It was truly hilarious. It was only a pot of rotten vegetation. The young woman swept Arbor a disdainful glance. Arbor didn't take her contempt seriously. In any case, she knew best whether she had money or not. Why did she have to go around announcing to the world, "I have money, I have money"? She was simply like a moron. It was fine as long as she had a good life. As for what other people thought, what did it have to do with her? If they wanted to despise her, then despise her. She was bored to death. "Miss, this medicinal herb, cough, even our shopkeeper doesn't know what it is." The shop assistant scratched his head and said sincerely, "Are you sure you want to buy it? But it doesn't look like it can live for much longer." "It's fine, I'll buy it," Arbor said with a wave of her small hand. "How much?" "This, 1 spirit coin is enough." All right, buy it." Arbor had the shop assistant wrap up the pot of Tian Xingzi. In reality, she was extremely happy on the inside. F*CK, a pot of neurotoxin's main catalyst was actually sold for 1 spirit coin. This is a kind of black-grade medicinal ingredient, dear. Tiske. Looks like I have to study more in the future. Only by studying more can I become cultured. Only by studying more can I not be deceived no matter where I go. The ancients didn't lie to me. The little fellow was secretly smug, but the mother and daughter kept looking at Arbor with strange eyes. The middle-aged woman felt that there was something wrong with the little stoic in front of her. Otherwise, why would he spend a spirit coin to buy a pot of dying unknown plants? What a joke. The young woman sneered, her face full of disapproval. "Xiang, A man's voice came from the second floor. A young man walked up the stairs and quickly walked to Zhang Wuxiang's side. His face was filled with a doting smile. "Those medicinal herbs have been packed. Is there anything else you like?" "Brother Wu." The young woman shyly took his hand and shook her head with a smile. "It's almost done. We've bought everything we need." Wu Genie also nodded. His gaze suddenly landed on the little stoic, and for a moment, he was dumbstruck as if he had seen a celestial being. Zhang Wuxiang couldn't help glaring angrily at Arbor. She shook Wu Genie's arm and stomped her feet, saying delicately, "Brother Wu, what are you looking at?" Chapter 21-25. Wu Jin also hurriedly regained his wits and couldn't resist sneaking a peek at the expressionless Arbor. He mumbled with a chuckle, "Nothing, nothing." Zhang Wuxiang couldn't help but feel resentful. She was originally a very average-looking woman, and her figure was also slightly plump. Normally, she was the one who chased after Wu Jin. Wu Jin was also the only son of Shuntian Prefecture's influential Heavenly Fortune sect's faction master. If it weren't for the fact that her family background was comparable to his and that sect Master Wu valued their great Source Island's power, their marriage might not have been successful. She hadn't married into the family yet, but Wu Jin had several beautiful handmaidens by his side. Her appearance wasn't beautiful enough, and her figure wasn't graceful enough, so she naturally could only work on other aspects. For example, her pill refinement skills were definitely something that could make people sit up and take notice of her. Even the Wu family's father and son had no choice but to properly flatter her when they needed her help. "Brother Wu, let's go." Wu Jin also glanced at the little stoic again and said absent-mindedly, "Xiang, Didn't you say earlier that you also took a fancy to a medicinal herb on the second floor? What's it called again? I think it's called soul-chasing grass. Zhang Wuxiang said with a smile. It's too expensive. This yellow-grade medicinal herb costs 2,000 spirit coins. I thought about it and decided to pass. Zhang Wuxiang sighed and said, after all, my current pill refinement skills haven't broken through to yellow grade yet. If I fail in refining, it'll be a considerable loss. Let's take a look in 3 months. At that time, my pill refinement skills might have already broken through to yellow grade. Okay. Wu Jin also nodded very happily and said, if Dad knows that your pill refinement skills have broken through to yellow grade alchemist level, he'll definitely be very happy. Zhang Wuxiang nodded non-committally and said with a smile, I think so too. After saying that, she swept a glance at the little stoic who was still strolling around on the side and involuntarily sneered. So what if she was good-looking? She was still a brainless fellow. A pauper who was only fit to buy junk when shopping. The little stoic was merely waiting for her dear husband. In any case, she had nothing to do, so she strolled through the second floor again. Zhang Wuxiang saw that Wu Jin's eyes had been involuntarily attracted to them. She couldn't help but mock him coldly. It's useless no matter how many times you walk around. If you don't have money, you still don't have money. Looking at them won't make them yours. Wu Jin was also stunned. He hurriedly pulled Zhang Wuxiang's sleeve and said rather awkwardly, Xiang others are shopping. It's inconvenient for us to disturb them. Let's go. What are you buying? Zhang Wuxiang sneered mockingly. She spent a long time choosing and only chose a pot of rotten leaves. He had already walked around the second floor 3 times. Ha! A pot of rotten leaves for 1 spirit coin. That's all I can buy. When Wu Jin also saw the little stoic's gaze shoot towards him, he couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. Zhang Wuxiang's mocking face was really ugly. It was other people's business whether they bought or not. Her mocking words were truly meddling in other people's business. Arba glanced at her in boredom and walked to the side without consulting the shop assistant. She took that pot of Tian Xingzi from him and stored it into her inner world with a wave of her hand. The shop assistant still said rather awkwardly, miss, once our medicinal ingredients are sold, we don't accept returns. Arba absent-mindedly glanced at that shop assistant. Chapter 21-26. Was she afraid that she would raise Tian Xingzi to death after returning home? Her heart ached for that 1 spirit coin and she would come back to find trouble with their pharmacy? Arba was baffled. Was she such a senseless person? Even if she did raise him to death, it was just a matter of 1 spirit coin. Was it worth her making a trip back? Zhang Wuxiang sneered again. The little stoic turned to glance at her and rolled her eyes. Woman, do you have a blocked nose? If you're sick, it's better to treat it as soon as possible. If the nose is blocked, the heat will descend, and the lung will descend. It's easy to develop lung disease. If you don't treat a minor illness, you'll suffer from a major illness. Let me give you a word of advice. Treat it properly. Madame Zhang and Zhang Wuxiang were instantly flabbergasted. After reacting for a while, Zhang Wuxiang said angrily, What did you say? What kind of attitude are you speaking to me with? Do you know who I am? What kind of attitude was this? Her attitude was too good. I'm telling you. I'm the 3rd Miss of Hongyuan Island, Zhang Wuxiang. You better be careful. A B*TCH who doesn't filter her mouth won't live long. Arba creased her brows. Why did the name Hongyuan Island sound a bit familiar? Xiang, Wu Jini hastily pulled back the impulsive and easily angered Zhang Wuxiang and said with a frown, Stop fooling around. She was buying medicinal herbs for no reason, yet she was being a busybody and provoking her time and time again. Anyone would feel uncomfortable. When Zhang Wuxiang saw that Wu Jini kept speaking up for the little stoic, the fury in her heart swelled. Flustered and exasperated, she flung Wu Jini's hand away and shouted, Brother Wu, why do you keep speaking up for that B*TCH? I'm the third miss of Hongyuan Island. She's just a country girl who popped out of nowhere, yet she dares to hoot in front of me. How can I not teach her a lesson? You don't have money, yet you're still pretending to be a big shot. You bought a pot of lousy plants and still think you're a nouveau riche. Simply. Zhang Wuxiang's voice suddenly stopped, and her eyes widened as she stared at the man in an ink robe who gradually appeared in front of her at the top of the stairs. Dressed in ink robes, his tall and slender figure, his exquisite features seemed to have stolen the heaven's fortune and could instantly steal another person's breath. Heavens! Heavens! How could there be such a handsome man in the world? Compared to the man in the black shirt, Wu Jini, who was standing beside him, was simply too ordinary. If he were to fall into a crowd, he wouldn't even make a splash. Zhang Wuxiang stared fixedly at Emolian. That gaze of hers was as if she wanted to see a hole in his face. She had never seen such a beautiful man in her entire life. His slender and jade-like figure walked over like a flower parting a willow. For a moment, the scenery in front of her seemed to have lost its natural color. All that was left in her eyes was a smiling man. Xiao Mu's gaze landed completely on the packet of carrot pancakes that Emolian was carrying. She ran over with a cheer and hooked her arm around his, asking, "Hubby, why did you take so long to buy them?" She had already walked around the second floor 3 times out of boredom, but this guy was still late. Jojo was not happy. "Oh, I met 2 vicious dogs on the way, so I taught them a lesson. That's why I'm late." Emolian raised his hand and patted the little fellow's head. The 2 of them carried the radish pancakes to the side as if there was no one else around. They put the radish pancakes on the small cabinet where the Tian Xingzi potted plant was placed. Emolian opened the oiled paper wrapping outside and took out a hot radish pancake. He smiled and handed it to Abba. "Here, try it." Chapter 21-27. The little fellow opened her mouth and took a small bite. It was hot, and she kept fanning her mouth with her little hand. She nodded and said, "Delicious." Emolian nodded with a smile. Then she also took a bite of the radish pancake. "My efforts were not in vain. The taste is not bad." Suddenly, an ear-piercing voice came from beside him. "Shameless." Xiang, Wu Jin was about to go crazy. In the past, Xiang was not so ignorant. Why was she meddling in other people's business today? That young master Mo Shan did not look like someone to be trifled with. Xiang behavior was simply testing the bottom line of his patience. Xiao Mu turned her head to look at her and creased her brows in annoyance. She wrapped up the remaining carrot pancakes again and stuffed them into her inner world before pulling Emolien's hand to walk downstairs. "Hubby, let's go." There was no need to talk nonsense with a fool. It was simply a waste of his energy. "Let's wait downstairs. I bought a lot of medicinal herbs." Pfft, a piece of lousy grass worth a spirit coin is called a lot of medicinal herbs. "Xiang, Wu Jin impatiently said, "You are too outrageous." "Brother Wu." Zhang Wuxiang did not expect Wu Jin to reprimand her face. Her eyes were filled with tears. She cried out in grievance, "You actually said this about your fiancée for a shameless B*TCH. You are also bewitched by her, aren't you? Who does she think she is? I am the 3rd miss of Hongyuan Island. That B*TCH looks like a vixen. What does she have to compare with me?" "Ah." Emolian abruptly turned his head around, and 2 serene rays shot out from his pair of severe phoenix eyes. She gently waved her left hand, and a mighty palm wind slapped toward Zhang Wuxiang's face. Bam! Ah! Zhang Wuxiang flew out miserably. She staggered and crashed into a display case. Fortunately, the display case was very sturdy, and the crystal layer was quite thick. That was why she didn't break it. However, Zhang Wuxiang felt that her back was about to break. She cried out in pain as she clutched her waist. Wu Jin also hurried over, wanting to pull her up. Who would have thought that she would throw a tantrum on the ground and scream, "Mother, mother! Kill her! Kill that bitch for me!" The middle-aged woman's face turned green when she saw her daughter suffer such a huge loss. With a leap, he jumped down from the railing on the second floor and landed in the hall on the first floor. A few merchants who were selecting medicinal herbs at the side could not help but be startled by her sudden appearance. When they looked back, they saw an extremely vicious woman standing in the middle of the hall with a face full of resentment, glaring at the beautiful couple in front of her. "Do you want to die?" Emolien said coldly. While she was confronting the middle-aged woman, she did not forget to continue feeding the little fellow. "Junior, you sure talk big." The middle-aged woman's eyes flashed with a cold light as she said angrily, "You hurt my daughter, and you want to leave just like that?" "Madame Zhang, please stop." Wu Jin helped Zhang Wuxiang down the stairs and hastily advised, "This is Liangyuan medicine shop. It's not suitable for fighting." Zhang Wuxiang shrieked harshly, "Mother, kill that B*TCH, kill that B*TCH." The little stoic pulled Emolien's hand and took a bite of the radish pancake. She looked up at Zhang Wuxiang with a bored expression. She was simply a crazy woman. He didn't know which corner it had jumped out from. Chapter 21-28. How could people's hearts be so twisted? Everyone was here to buy things, so wasn't it good to be polite to each other? Did they have to show off their superiority and trample Jojo under their feet so that they could feel at ease? Madame Zhang felt that after her daughter suffered such a huge loss, she should teach the little stoic a lesson so that these young children wouldn't walk out with their heads held high and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Wait. Liangyuan medicine shop's shopkeeper finally rushed over. He had just finished buying that batch of 3-leaf flowers and had his subordinates take inventory when he heard a shop assistant hastily report that someone was causing trouble in the front hall. When he rushed over to take a look, it turned out to be Madame Zhang of Great Source Island who was arguing with the honored customer who bought the 3-leaf flowers. The shopkeeper couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Great Source Island had always been on good terms with Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord. The people of Great Source Island had lived in Shuntian Prefecture for a long time, so from the madams to the young masters and misses, they were accustomed to being unreasonable. Now that Zhang Wuxiang was being taught a lesson by someone else, how could Madame Zhang take it lying down? This matter wasn't easy to mediate, and it might even bring disaster to the innocent bystanders. The shopkeeper hastily signaled the shop assistant next to him with his eyes and secretly instructed him to hurry out and ask for help. Meanwhile, he hastily stepped forward and stood in front of the little stoic and Zhang Wuxiang. He said to Madame Zhang with a fawning smile, "This old one didn't know Madame was coming. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you. Shopkeeper, this has nothing to do with you. Move aside." Madame Zhang's tone was very stiff and arrogant. But... The shopkeeper still stood in front of Arba and shook his head with a fawning smile. "This young lady bought many things from my shop. She's our store's honored customer, so I can't let anything happen to our honored customer in the shop." Bullsh*T. Zhang Wuxiang shrieked rudely and unreasonably, "What Bullsh*T honored customer? Are you trying to coax a 3-year-old child? Didn't this little B*TCH just spend 1 spirit coin to buy a pot of lousy flowers?" "Shopkeeper Chiu, don't forget that our Great Source Island buys medicinal ingredients worth tens of thousands of spirit coins from your shop every year. Don't lose a watermelon for a sesame seed and offend our entire Great Source Island for a pauper. Don't lose more than you gain." "Shopkeeper Chiu." Zhang Wuxiang placed her hand on her waist and shouted with a haughty expression on her face. Mrs. Zhang also nodded. "That's right. Shopkeeper Chiu, you should consider what you should do." Shopkeeper Chiu was dumbfounded. What spirit coin? He thought for a moment and hurriedly said, "This little girl just ordered all the 3-leaf flowers here and spent 15,000 spirit coins." "What?" Mrs. Zhang, Zhang Wuxiang, and Wu Jin were all stunned. They turned around and looked at Arba in disbelief. "How is this possible?" Zhang Wuxiang immediately screamed, her expression completely unable to accept it. I just saw her walk around the second floor 3 times and pick up a pot of rotten flowers. 15,000 spirit coins? Shopkeeper, who are you trying to fool? Shopkeeper Chio's face was filled with confusion. What benefit would I get from lying to you? That's the truth. Shopkeeper, there's no need to talk nonsense with a retard. Come and pay the bill. Ah, good Mississippi. Shopkeeper Chio hastily plastered on a smile and walked toward Xiao Mu. Zhang Wuxiang's expression was completely distorted. She was in disbelief. How was this possible? Just now, she had asked the shopkeeper if he wanted to do business with Hongyuan Island, but now, she was surprised. Chapter 21-29. In the end, a year's worth of orders from Hongyuan Island couldn't even compare to the girl's daily expenses. Wasn't this a slap to her face? She was completely trampling on her face, ruthlessly trampling on it like mud. Zhang Wuxiang was so angry that her entire body couldn't stop trembling. Her gaze was like a twisted viper as she stared at Arbor. If she could, she really wanted to transform into a python and swallow this B***tch alive. Zhang Wuxiang only felt that she had never been so humiliated in front of others in her 32 years of life as a noble lady. Arbor's calm gaze made her deeply feel that she saw a trace of disdain in his eyes. It was as if that stoic face didn't care about Hongyuan Island at all. Zhang Wuxiang clenched her fists, and her bones creaked. Madame Zhang's expression was also very awkward as she stared at Arbor, not knowing how to react. Arbor had already walked to the counter with shopkeeper Chio to settle the bill. After settling the bill of 15,000 spirit coins, the shopkeeper was also very embarrassed. His deceitful shop assistant even took a spirit coin from this esteemed guest for that pot of lousy flowers just now. It was really too deceitful. Hence, shopkeeper Chio took out several stalks of intermediate-level medicinal herbs as compensation for Xiao Mu, apologizing profusely. Arbor naturally didn't care. In fact, that Tian Xingzi really wasn't a trash herb. It was scary to be uncultured. Arbor looked at shopkeeper Chio with a strange gaze and reached out to put all the 3-leaf flowers on the ground into his inner world. Then, he nodded and said, "Okay, you don't have to send me off." "Mother," Zhang Wuxiang said angrily, "could it be that you're not willing to stand up for your daughter after seeing her suffer such a big loss?" At this moment, Madame Zhang was a bit hesitant. There weren't many rich people who could take out 15,000 spirit coins in one go in the Shuntian prefecture. Madame Zhang didn't believe that this girl didn't have any background or status. However, it was a fact that her daughter suffered a loss. If she let the young couple leave like this, Madame Zhang would feel suffocated and couldn't swallow it. Wu Jin could not help but feel a headache coming on, and whispered to Zhang Wuxiang, "Wuxiang, don't make trouble anymore. Since this young lady can take out 15,000 spirit coins to buy such a large amount of medicinal herbs, she can't be an ordinary person. If this continues, it won't do us any good." Zhang Wuxiang clenched her teeth and shouted, "Brother Wu, don't tell me you really like that vixen?" Why was he speaking up for her again and again? So what if he had 15,000 spirit coins? It's not like our Zhang clan doesn't have that many spirit coins. What's there to be proud of? After saying that, she put one hand on her waist and said sternly, "If you have the ability, then buy all the medicinal herbs in the entire Liang Yuan medicine store." A few merchants in the hall were huddled in the corner, pointing at Zhang Wuxiang and whispering among themselves. "This girl is too rude and unreasonable." "That's right. Why do you keep making things difficult for a little girl? He looks ordinary, but now that he's distorted, he looks even more terrifying." Zhang Wuxiang was furious. She turned her head and screamed, "What did you say? Why do you need to buy this Liang Yuan medicine store? Giving all of them to my Chow Chow is also fine." A laughter came from afar into everyone's ears. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be taken aback. They all looked in the direction of the door. She pointed at the little stoic, who was standing to the side nibbling on a radish pancake, and shrieked as if she had lost all reason. "Shameless thing! If it weren't for you, how could we possibly be chased out by someone?" As soon as she finished speaking, Ding Yun swept Zhang Wuxiang with his sleeve, and she felt a powerful force press against her chest. She spat out a mouthful of blood with a pft, and was sent flying toward the shelf behind her. "Hey, hey!" The shopkeeper was about to die from fright. He hurriedly threw out a rope to hold Zhang Wuxiang's body, preventing her from heavily crashing into the medicine cabinet behind her. Otherwise, the whole cabinet of medicinal herbs would probably suffer a calamity. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.